The COB is brought to you by Pepperstone, trusted by traders in over 160 countries. From Barangaroo Studios, here's what you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Well, hello. Welcome to the COB on this Monday afternoon. I'm Nadine Blaney.
And I am Tessa Ercilia, joining Nadine today.
Yeah, and it's great to have you here. Not great day on the market overall, but when we walked into the newsroom this morning, you've been in newsrooms your whole career, when you have stuff like the Middle East happening and those tensions rising, it does sort of put you on edge, as investors clearly are.
Yeah, and it wasn't a great weekend locally and overseas, as you know what happened in Sydney. So yeah, we were looking at the markets expecting a lot of movement, but I think what's interesting to see is that a lot of this was already priced in a little bit at the end of last week. So that's kind of what we're seeing today. If we have a look at how the market is tracking at the moment, down 0.41% there.
Yeah, so that's the COB Australia Index. We do have the last of the day's trades coming through the S&P ASX 200, so we'll update you on the final figures in just a bit. But safe to say that the majority of sectors were in to negative territory. But don't forget, interest rates continue to be an overarching theme as well, and that's why we saw Infotech get hit particularly hard. So there's no getting around it. Risk-off environment. We've got safe havens really getting a lot of the attention. But, Tessa, today, which kind of flew under the radar, the fact that we've got the metals markets really rallying, aluminium, nickel, copper. We've got the US and the UK restricting Russian origin supply.
Correct, and we've seen some companies having to offload some of those businesses and contracts they have with anything linked to these Russian supplies. So that really pushed metals up. And if we actually look just broadly on the sectors, you've got materials expected from this news actually, and energy, as we saw from what's happening in the Middle East.
Interesting that we didn't see huge parabolic moves coming through in oil. Vandana Hari is one of our regular guests, and she had just tweeted, look, why is my phone not ringing when the most interesting part of this is perhaps the fact that oil hasn't reacted to the extent that you might expect it to? So we've got to call in.
That's actually an interesting angle. Like, to think we all expected it to do one thing. Although if you look at the volatility index, I think it hit a 5-month high today. So we are seeing fears in that regard.
There's no getting around that. And then add to the mix that we've got earnings in the United States.
We've got our coverage, of course, as well. We did that today.
Big banks.
Yeah, big banks coverage. And it was disappointing, to say the least, for markets. It's not that the individual companies reported some profit or reported some good numbers, but it just hit the mark of what analysts were expecting, and that was it, really.
Yeah, it's those net interest margins as well. So you can go online. We look up the quarter report or U.S. big banks. Today, yeah, you can find it online if you'd like to listen to his analysis. I know he's got a few props out there in the Twitter sphere. But this week we do have Goldman Sachs, and what it will be interesting as well is Netflix.
Yes, and all these companies, interest rates, as you said earlier, it is what is weighing on their numbers, really, if their balance sheet. So it is the interest rate story there. We're hearing from the Fed also, so that'll be interesting to see what guidance we'll hear. Yeah,
well, and lots of Fed speakers in the meantime. So here is the tech space. Just going to show...
Well, there you go, rate-sensitive tech, right?
Yeah, how hard some of these companies were hit through the day today. Look, I had a chat with Dean Fergie from Cyan Investment Management about Life 360 today. It's off by 3%. Wonder if that's a buying opportunity. You'll have to go to ausbiz.com.au and listen to that interview to find out. Industrials as well, checking out where some of the pain is there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Seven Group off by 2.37% with that bid for Boral still on the table.
Yeah, Transurban, I think, reporting quarterlies this week. Interesting to see where that goes. Horizon, down.
I think more interesting would be energy. Can we skip ahead to energy? Because that was one of the bright spots on the market, although you can see not those listed there. Flip the page and we might get a bit more love being shown to the likes of Karoon Energy, which was up by close to 1% on that risk premium being ascribed to oil and energy.
It calmed down today, so we saw that climb on Friday, right? And then oil just again getting a more neutral footing today. All right.
Some corporate stories today. I guess that's Next DC. It's back online after that $1 billion cap raise, so that explains what we're seeing in its share price today.
Yeah, crude energy there again. Rio BHP, as we've been saying, expected given what's happening in the news. Star Entertainment, this one is interesting to watch. It was, something we focused on today, awaiting the second public inquiry into its Sydney operations. So we'll see what comes out of that.
And it was the stock of the day. So David Koshi and I in the newsroom were sort of tongue-in-cheek saying deep value. Let's see what David Lane from Ord Minnett and Kai Chen from MPC Markets had to say about Star Entertainment.
Those looking for a long-term investment, albeit very, very, very risky, but a long-term investment that could well, based on our fair value, could well double or even go higher. It might be worthwhile putting in the bottom drawer.
The old saying, you got to know when to hold them, when to fold them.
Oh, I like it.
I think it's a fold for me because
it's a fold.
It's a fold.
Right, sell.
Yeah, sell because there's just better opportunities out there, and I get the argument that with net tangible assets valued at about 80 cents, there is some upside to that, but the risk that's in there. They've basically had an inquiry in 2022. The commissioner is worried that basically they haven't implemented any of these changes, and if the inquiry goes through, they will lose a license. Yeah. It's not a risk that for us we're willing to take. Yeah.
There you go. There's a view on Star Entertainment Group. I mean, just going from bad to worse, and not laughing for any shareholders still, trying to determine what to do if you're in it already. Look, let's get to what we have coming up tonight. Tessa.
Yeah, there we go. You were watching the U.S. U.S. retail sales, manufacturing data. Look, this is all going back to that inflation story because we want to see what those numbers bring and whether it will give the Fed some ammunition perhaps and some help, because now we're seeing that I saw today Goldman Sachs I think started pricing in or companies are starting to price in a cut maybe towards the end of the year rather than third quarter. So that's kind of pushing it back. Yeah. So we're looking at those data points tonight, and also FOMC member.
Well, we've got William speaking, but just on that retail sales piece, we are expecting it to be a bit more subdued in March. Because consumers do feel the pinch. And they also, particularly in the United States, like we talk about the transmission between interest rates and our mortgage rates. Well, in the States, gas prices, as they call it, really hit hard, and they really hit consumer sentiment quickly. We also get the Fed Empire State Index and the NAHB Housing Market Index, which should, continue to reflect just a bit of a downbeat mood. Really amongst manufacturers and home builders, but I dare say that it will be that retail sales read that really gets a lot of the interest in the United States. And just to not overlook Europe, we are getting some industrial production data out, so we're anticipating a lift coming through in February. But Westpac is saying it will likely be marginal, given the broad pressures facing the sector across the region. So lots to digest when we get in tomorrow.
Just overnight, not to forget the earnings coming out. So we're watching Goldman Sachs and Charles Schwab tonight, and so we'll have those numbers by tomorrow.
It's always a bit confusing when we're talking today, tonight, Friday, Thursday.
I have those columns. Sydney time, overseas time. Okay.
And so, look, tomorrow is a big one around the region here because we do get Chinese GDP and retail sales, also unemployment data there. We get UK unemployment. And we also get a few little quarterly reports coming through here locally.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about earlier, actually. It was the Goldman Sachs forecast for China's year-on-year economic growth. I think they had kind of pushed it up a little bit, saying that, there is strength in the manufacturing sector of China. So how would that translate, or if that is even significant enough, for the impacted companies, Australian companies, on those numbers? So something we're keeping an eye on tomorrow, definitely. We'll be discussing at length with our experts. China unemployment. Also in the UK, we'll have the unemployment numbers out. And as I said, we have our quarterly reports out. We'll have Hub24 CEO tomorrow. So we'll be having that chat.
Yeah, and just on the GDP, just reading a note from CBA here saying that the risk is that the data surpasses already strong expectation and weighs on the yuan. Okay. So let's get a look at some leaders, some market leaders today. Tessa, see what we can pick from here. But I dare say, yeah, we've already covered it because, you know, it is really a reflection of those metal prices. And that includes, it's actually nice to see Rio Tinto up there. It's got a production report coming out tomorrow. It's up by about 4%. And Nanosonics, I didn't see any news associated with it. Could be wrong. But putting on a pretty healthy 3%.
Rio, you talking? Oh,
Nanosonics,
yeah. So there you go. So yeah, as expected, I think we're just following the trend of the news today. Let's look at the laggards now. The other end, who is it? Chalice Mining there, down 9.5%. Gold Road, 6.85. EBIT Nano. Are these expected for you, Nadine? Well, next DC, we saw that. We talked about it earlier.
Well, the thing with Gold Road is it had to respond to media speculation about a potential acquisition that it's considering in Canada. It did come out and say that it is looking at that acquisition. I'm not quite sure why it hit its price so hard, but even though we're seeing a lot of strength in the price of gold, gold was a pretty unloved sector today overall, sort of counterintuitively. I spoke with Barry Dawes from Martin Place Securities. He doesn't mind. He's putting his money into the gold miners. Levisa's on that list, but look, no news associated with it, off by about 4, close to 5%.
And you know something that was we were talking about early in the morning, and we haven't checked really today. Maybe we'll look in during the week. Airline stocks. I mean, what's happening? Because we saw the diversion of a lot of flights, obviously over the Middle East. So that's another story that we might be following this week. Interesting to see what happens to those stocks. And now looking at the small cap part of our market. You have Pioneer there.
Yeah,
16.5%.
I didn't do a lot of research into these today, but that's pretty punchy for Ioneer. I'll be looking into it to see if there was news associated, up by about 17%. Just spoke with a couple of good small caps in the previous hour. You can find them online under the small cap section of our website. And here as well, Appen. I mean, wow, what a story, down by further 10% today, but it would be battered and bruised along with the broader tech sector as well, one would think.
Not unexpected. And you've got a gold mine at the top there, down by 11.11%. All right, should we look at, I wanted to look at what the ASX is doing now at the moment. It is, broadly down. We're looking at the market. So ASX, it says here, dropping 35.6 points, or 0.46%. And we're looking at the SIBO on your screen. It is down by 0.41%.
Yeah, and when we look at the different sectors, we've got to finish this Monday session 9 out of 11 sectors lower. Materials, the best performer, as we said, up by about 0.5%. And ASX, thanks for the data, saying that it's up by 3.4% over the past 5 trading days. So what we will have to be very attuned to tonight as investors, as traders, is obviously any headlines that are coming out of the Middle East. The U.S. has already said that it will not take part in any retaliatory action against Iran.
To inject some calm into the situation at the moment.
Really trying to diffuse the situation. But look, Asian stocks, generally speaking, were weaker today. Gold was firmer. This Middle East crisis continuing to grip markets.
Absolutely. So we're keeping an eye on all those that might move tomorrow. Oil, of course, will be one of the top stories tomorrow. And also following along with what happens with those Russian sanctions, if our material sector does follow on through that.
All right, so look, if you've missed anything today, you can catch up online. We've been covering Bitcoin, the halving event that's coming later this week. It's all happening.
It's such a busy week, actually. It will be a busy week.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to jobs on Thursday. But in the meantime, we hope you have a good evening. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for joining.
The COB is brought to you by Pepperstone, trusted by traders in over 160 countries.
Gil.
Oh, hey, Ken.
Here we go.
You still trading?
Pepperstone. Trusted in over 160 countries. You?
Well, I'm still with...
I don't think anyone trusts them.
No, I'm fine with it. Just like I'm fine with my trusty coach. 1980s John McEnroe.
Pathetic! Horrible!
1980s, huh? So Really temperamental?
Keeps me on my toes.
Awful!
It's a bit intense.
Be better!
Still fine with it.
Use your racket!
He's just staring at us.
Yeah, sometimes he yells and then sometimes he just stares.
Is he aiming for your face, Gil?
He's fine with it!
Yeah, he's definitely trying to hit you.
Fine with it.
Don't be fine with it. Switch to Pepperstone, trusted by traders in over 160 countries.
Come on, you cannot be serious!
Don't do that.
Ow.